Good morning, Sulakshana de Mel. It's a pleasure to have you today here to talk about historical dialogue. And I must tell you how I first got to know of what you are doing. I was invited for a book launch and Dr. Malati Dialvis's name was there and Hasini Haputantri. And I really wanted to come. And I came and I bought this book called Archive of Memory. And I was looking at the production and, being a writer myself, I was thinking who could have afforded this kind of, finish and polish. And I realized that it's published by historical.lk. And I was very impressed with this book because it had collected, little beautiful picture of a little thing. It could be like a pair of spectacles, right? And then there was a story here. And this story was about a superb maths teacher who was Tamil and who had been hiding under a bed, in the 83 riots, and how the students had gone to look for him. And then beautifully done, because he says that the teacher emerged out of under the bed laughing. And I know he was saved, and how his spectacles fell on the ground. So absolute tragedy written in a vein that shows the human story behind it and how many people helped and how human we are. And I realized that what you all have done is collect these disparate objects of people's life and had also written a little story behind them, so that if you read it carefully, it really connects a whole history that we do not normally see or read. Stories of personal people. And it's such a beautifully done thing, because those are things we could always connect it. For example, if I lose my spectacles, I would be lost because I can't read anything without that. And then there's like Ask Me and jujubes and necklaces. So that with a little story. And I was so interested in what was going on. And then I realized that there's a whole philosophy behind it about memory and all that, and how important it is that we remember. So I would ask you first, Sulakshana, can you introduce who you are? Like, what is historical dialogue? Who is funding it? Who started it? Right? And what you are doing here.
Thank you, Madhuvashini, for this opportunity to talk to you and talk to you in your channel. I'm Sulakshana de Mel, and I'm the technical lead at Historical Dialogue.lk, which is a unit of a larger GIZ project that started in 2017. And to say who GIZ is, it's the German Development Corporation. And German Development Corporation had been present in Sri Lanka since 1960s, I guess. And to best introduce GIZ would be to refer to one of their best known projects in Sri Lanka, which is the German Tech.
I remember that from my childhood. Sulakshana, people going to German Tech. When was that established?
I think it was in the 1960s.
Yeah, so right, even before I was born.
Yes.
Okay. So they do many projects here, GIZ.
Yes, they have several projects here, but the overarching umbrella under which all these projects fall is reconciliation.
What does GIZ stand for? Is that a German name? I was trying to...
Yes, it is. And apologies for not pronouncing it.
That's okay. I don't think we could understand even if you did. So it's a German name that is GIZ, but it's...
Yes.
Okay, that's so interesting. Okay, so this particular historical dialogue, what exactly do you do?
So we do, well, our work is broadly divided into several areas. One of the main things, so among these areas, one of the main things is promoting a culture of memory and memorialization. And under this, one of our best known works is this traveling history museum titled It's About Time, or in Sinhala, it's Kale Avit Penin Pamela Kalam. The Traveling History Museum was conceptualized over a period of 1 year, and it's a lot of academics and artists who contributed to it, and experts.
Before we go into that, before we go into that, why memory? Why is memory important? Why are we focusing on that?
So memory is, I would say, maybe a rather relatively new discourse in Sri Lanka, maybe not more than, say, 10 years. But it's a discipline and a discourse that's been around in the world, especially applicable to those societies and communities that are coming out of conflict. The main aim, I mean, the reference here, one of the references here could be, for instance, what happened in Germany after the World War I and World War II. The importance of looking back at the past and reflecting on what happened to us. What happened to us as a community of people. And I think that is important because with this reflection and understanding of oneself and the other community, one can make sure, or at least the objective is that from the lessons learned in that process, we make sure that it never happens again.
As we speak, Sulakshana, we are all wondering what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, right? Like, do we never learn? And I think the one
do we ever learn?
Ever, absolutely. Do we ever learn? And what, like, what's the cost of forgetting? Like, we went through world wars and millions died, millions, and utter suffering. And here someone is almost trying to start it again, right? So the absolute relevance of what you're saying is clearer now than ever before. Why? Like, why would we forget? Even the images of the world war shouldn't be forgotten, right? Nor should the poetry, like, Wilfred Owen's Siegfried Sassoon's poetry, they should not be forgotten because they were actually showing what happens in a world war. It's like the horror of the trenches. Forget the glory and the flags and, whatever, but there is people dying very often, people who had nothing to do with decision making. Right? The pictures of the world war should be pasted in every country, probably. So now more than ever, we realize the dangers of forgetting. Of course, even if they remember, if it's power block and, greed for whatever to increase what you have, it's not going to stop people. But at least the people will say enough. No one can act alone, right? So I get the importance of memory. And especially, like, you're younger than me, but in my generation, we have seen two, like, the 89, 71 was very small, but 89, there were insurgencies happening. There was death. There was utter pain. So this kind of memory, and you have subtitled this Reflections on 70 Years of Independence.
Yes.
So that you have actually told the little story. What is the significance of the little man's, ordinary person's story, Sulakshana?
So this initiative, the Archive of Memory, we basically started it in over a period of many years. But I guess the seed for this was back in 2018 as we were celebrating 70 years since independence. I mean, something that our experience even with the Traveling History Museum is that a lot of younger people no longer remember or do not know or have not heard what has happened in the past. I mean, what we wanted to do was to get people to write about their personal stories, these everyday people's everyday stories, revolving or weaving around an object of memory, and how these stories illustrate the social, cultural, political, and economic changes that has taken place and transformed our lives in the last 70 years or 70 plus years. And if you read these stories, you can you can get an insight into these changes that has taken place. So, I mean, another objective of this initiative, Madhu, is if you come to our museum, you will see that we are also questioning on who writes history. I mean, even globally, the position is that history is often written from a place of power. For instance, if you take the example of the Roman Empire, I mean, Virgil is consulted and assigned to write the Aeneid, after Rome became an empire. So likewise, I mean, the question here we are asking is, who writes your history, and do everyday people's, ordinary everyday people's, everyday stories matter, or should it influence in writing history? So the basic premise that it's always a very top-down approach. We are asking whether shouldn't it be also a bottom-up process. So so this initiative also falls within that category in the Mobile History Museum, the Traveling History Museum.
How does it function practically, Sulakshana? Is it in a container, or how does the exhibition, or how does it move? How does the museum move?
So basically, Madhu, it has different variants. In the full-fledged form, it has over 25 25 exhibits classified under 4 different themes. So when we go into an area, we hire a community hall, or in the case of the Moratuwa Museum, it was the Buddhist hall in Moratuwa. And then in Nittambua, for instance, it was the Bandaranaike Public Library. Likewise, we hire a space that is accessible to the public, to the general public. And we have the full-fledged museum, which is divided into several zones, and you have a walkthrough. So that is one variant. And when we do that, we are in one location for at least 10 days. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Your mic is sometimes unclear, Sulakshana.
Okay. So,
we both said the same thing. Come closer. Did you say it lasts for 10 days? When
10 days in one locality,
okay.
generally.
And is it free for people? Do they have to buy? Anyone can walk in?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
And you advertise through posters in that area?
Yes. We have posters. It's a multi kind of faceted visibility strategy. We have posters in the area. We use social media. We have advertisements on cinema halls, etc. So this was before COVID. In 2019, we traveled to 4 different locations, and we had over 18,000 visitors at these 4 different locations. So that's one variant. The second variant is where we go with 1 or 2 exhibits to a location. For instance, when Ministry of National Integration had their language day, we took our scripted exhibit there, which kind of shows you the progression of Tamil and Sinhala alphabet. And we also have this interactive element in that. Yeah, that is the second variant. So where we take parts of it. The third variant, which you may have most recently experienced, is the container. So it's 2 containers exhibiting a particular exhibit. So this time it was one container consisted of archive of memory, and the second container consisted of a window to Sri Lankan history, which is a research project done by history department of Colombo University, led by.
We spoke about that last Saturday.
Right.
Yes.
So I mean, it was that exhibit, which looks at the 13th century history to 1948. So that is the third variant. The latest variant that we have is the digital space. So we launched a website. It's abouttime.lk, which you can all visit. At present, we only have it in English language, but we are in the process of translating it to Sinhala and Tamil. As you know, I mean, in all these variants, the common factor is the interaction. It's the dynamism in the museum. So here we are also challenging the museum experience, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so popular among school children. Normally, the museum experience is where, I mean, you go into a museum, the National Museum, you see all these kids holding hands and walking in a line, being told not to touch anything. Whereas you come into our museum, you can touch, you can taste, you can listen to music, and you can even contribute your thoughts. It's very interactive.
We will have to explain the taste part of it. Is it because you have things like Malu bunnies, which, is featured here?
No. We have one exhibit that we have worked with Dr. Aisha Abdurrahman.
Okay.
She takes a common ingredient like coconut, and in her exhibit she displays how coconut gets exhibited in different ways, or coconut is used in different ways across kitchens in Sri Lanka, from down south, maybe Beliata to Mana to Jaffna to Trinco, so or to the hill country. So and during at this exhibit, you also get, she also exhibits the different variants of coconut, whether it's coconut sambal or something else. And so the visitors are invited to taste it and also contribute with their recipe.
I see.
Yes.
So it's very interactive and it's very engaging.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Archive of Memory, some of these surely must be photographs only, right, Sulakshana?
So
like,
yes.
Things which you, what are the actual physical things that you have to touch? So Malupang. Do you have malupang people can eat as well?
Yeah, not eat, but we display. These are prototypes that we have. We don't have the original object of memory.
Okay.
But we have replicates. We have replicated, and so you can read the story. We have it printed. You can see the object of memory, and we also have a device through which you can listen to the story in a selected language.
I see. And are the scripts all 3 languages, Sulakshana?
Yes. So that is a basic approach in our work. We work in all 3 languages.
Right. And even the audio is
in 3 languages. So audio, you can listen to all the 70 stories, either in Sinhala, Tamil or English, if you go to www.archiveofmemory.lk.
Yes, I hope everyone heard that. www.archiveofmemory.lk. Apart from, the historical aspect, even as a language teacher, I was just thinking, hearing it once in Sinhala and once in English, and Tamil, English, Sinhala.
Yes.
A way of learning language apart from everything else.
Yes.
Sulakshana, so apart from the memory exhibitions, right? Or sorry, the exhibitions and the mobile museums, what else do you do at your institute?
So in our unit, we also work on dialogue, promoting dialogue platforms. And these dialogue platforms are very creative. For instance, tomorrow morning, we have a memory walk with an expert taking a group of people who register and speak about, for instance, the history of Havelock Town. And so likewise, we have at least 11 routes in Sri Lanka where the experts who research in this area will take you around, groups of not more than 20, So it's not actually an expert taking you around, because often the participants are also, you know, from that neighborhood or may know about the history of the area. So it's often a walking discussion. And
So practically, you're turning a living city into a museum for a few hours.
yes,
Right? That's so fascinating. Yeah.
so I myself, for instance, conduct a memory walk on the 18th and 19th century history of Moratuwa, which is my place of birth, which is my hometown. And I look at, for instance, how the bourgeoisie community of the time contributed to the larger economy, the colonial economy of Ceylon then. And so likewise, even like Dr. Malati Dialvis, late Dr. Malati Dialvis conducted 3 walks. And at present, we have Professor Asoka Diswaisa, Ganga Rajini Disanaika conducting walks. And we conduct walks not only in Colombo, but also in Jaffna, in Kandy. We want to go to Hambantota and other areas. So the longer term plan is actually to get out of Colombo and go to the other districts. The challenge, Madhu, is it's very well researched. All these walks are very well researched. So we need people who have done research in these areas to work on it.
It's absolutely what wonderful way of learning.
Learning.
So this whole program is called Alternative Spaces for Education. And I was thinking how alive and how interactive that kind of thing is. I will try and get someone to come and talk about walks as well, because it's such a. And how do people register for this, Sulakshana? How do they get to know that these are being held?
So if the audience connect with our Facebook page, which is historicaldialogue.lk, dialogue spelled as LOGUE.lk, or visit our website, which is www.historicaldialogue.lk. There will be notices on the upcoming walks. You can read about the past walks. Even if you're a teacher from a school, from a university or anywhere else, or you can gather a community, some participants to come on a walk, you can write a request. You can request us to organize a walk for you. So we also do very demand-driven walks. And
that is, so you have the museum, the mobile museum, you have the walks. What else do you offer there?
So under the dialogue formats, we also conduct film screenings. These are films on memory and historical dialogue. They're not and documentary films, short films, long films, but these are not necessarily films limited just to Sri Lankan films, but also South Asian and international films. So when we screen films, it's not just viewing a film, but it's also that interesting dialogue or the discussion that takes place for hours outside after the screening. We have also developed at least 4 film guides. And in these guides, these are collections of 10 to 13 films, which will help a facilitator to use the film for a discussion. So it will not only give you a synopsis of the film, but will also kind of direct you on how to conduct the discussion and the main themes and the questions you could ask your audience. And there is a lot of demand for these guides from university film clubs, youth film clubs, etc.
I'm assuming the language would be English.
The guides are available in all 3 languages.
I see. And the discussions would be what language selection?
Depends, Madhu, depends on the, so we conduct, we work in all 3 languages.
Right. So even the walks are probably very fluid, no? Whatever.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Apart from that, I'm assuming you also publish books, because looking at this.
Yes. So we work on publications and we work with history teachers on developing teaching history, alternative ways of or exciting ways of teaching history. We work with networks of history teachers, both at school and university level. The other area of work is archiving, community archiving. So when communities want us to archive, this is also again demand driven. We have been approached by several communities for support to archive their work that communities have, collected over a period of time. An example, a recent example that I could give you is this Amblypitia case. If you remember, in the 1980s, there was this particular incident of a school in Amblypitia and the disappearance of school children from a single class. And to further that case, and the missing children's parents organization was formed, and led by late Mr. Chandrapala. So for that whole process, they had basically collected a lot of letters, paper cuttings, legal documents over the years. And so, as you know, today, the people who kind of led this movement, this organization, aging, and one of the basic, principles that, or the messages that they were determined to disseminate was that that particular incident should not be forgotten. And as you know, a lot of younger people today do not remember, especially regarding the youth insurrections.
Sulakshana, the eternal question, is it better to remember or forget? This has been discussed over and over again in literature. If you take Ishaguro's The Buried Giant, it's exactly that question, because it's complicated, it's not simple. Because sometimes remembering might be a continuation of resentment and anger, which never will die. And that has consequences. But forgetting might be repeating the same mistakes, the horrible mistakes that were made before. So then what? So I would personally like that. And Buried Giant beautifully expresses that dilemma.
Absolutely.
Not that one is better than the other. So I would personally, if I was to figure it out, I would say remember for the sake of not repeating the mistake.
Yes.
Not maybe for the sake of revenge, because then it's going to be endless. You did this, I do this. So that's going to be a hugely never-ending process. I would say it's again a simplistic thing I'm saying, but it might be good to remember not to repeat the mistake, because if we all forget, it's possible to fall in the same situation again. Yes. As much as the peace it might endanger, we might make the same mistake. So again, watching the world scene right now, have we forgotten where this leads to? Right? It's on a knife edge. Who now try to enter the fray. So very complicated questions, but within that, the importance of not forgetting to make sure we don't repeat the same mistake, I think that is something that is unquestionably valid. Right. So apart from we've come to the archiving, right? And how do people access that? Do they have to come to you? Where are you located? And
so, yes,
where are the film screenings? All that. Yeah.
So we are at number 25 Elibank Road in Colombo 5. That's where we are. That's where our office is. And you can write to us. The film screenings are also conducted there, Madhu. It's not a very big space, but I think about 20 people maybe a maximum of 25, can sit comfortably to view. But then with today's COVID guidelines, it would be much less.
I was thinking the same country gave us the Goethe Institute, which is so much a part of our Sri Lankan cultural life. So now again, funded by the same government, but for a different reason. And you all are more specific in what you do. So this is smaller than the Goethe Institute Film Hall, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually a house that we have converted into an office space. So it's like a living dining area of a house. And a small house, and yes, but 20 people can sit comfortably, and you can write to us through our website, through our Facebook, or visit us directly. We also have a small reference library, Yeah, so we also promote research fellows to come and work with us. And so write to us, because we always, we are open and flexible to change, you know, I mean, our activity, important element, especially in our traveling history museum, where the visitors can provide us with feedback on what they like, what we can do differently. So we are open to all that.
Tell me, before we end, Sulakshana, how did you get these stories? What was the process of collecting this?
So in 2018, as we were celebrating 70 years of, you know, 70 years since independence, it's something, actually the seed for this was much before. We were wondering, like, how do we collect stories? How do we kind of illustrate this socio-cultural, political, economic transformation and change that happened in Sri Lanka in a more interesting way? We first published a small booklet with 7, you know, stories at the National Archive lawn. And then we put a call out, a bid out to calling for everyone to send their stories, their personal everyday stories revolving around an object of memory. And to date, I think we have received more than 200 stories from all over Sri Lanka. And for this initiative, we kind of shortlisted and looked at, it kind of compiled 70 stories. You can visit the www.archiveofmemory.lk website if you want to listen to these stories in 3 languages, in the language of your choice. I'm sorry, there's a helicopter.
No problem. I was thinking when the video goes on, Sulakshana, we can type those names.
Yes.
In the comment section, so that it's very clearly given. Yeah.
So you can not only listen to the stories in a language of your choice, Sinhala, Tamil, or English, at the archiveofmemory.lk website. If you want to get in touch with us and if you have a story that you would like to contribute, there is also a way to get in touch.
Before we end, I've been to, you know, museums abroad there, it's very interactive, right? And some things you said, like I'm used to seeing a guide being followed by people within a museum, but you describe the same thing in a living city. So you're making this interactive element primary, and it's also give and take. You're asking us for our stories. Yes. So that it seems that it's a very novel way of transforming a space which we are used to seeing as very static. If you take a National Museum, for example. So this kind of excitement, I think, would be very welcome, this kind of engagement that you're asking the viewer to do, right? So, Sulakshana, I find it very interesting what you have said, and very, you know, welcome in a context where we need education. We need to not forget, and we need to also look beyond our problems to what we can be. Right. So I thank you so much for coming. Is there anything else you want to add, Sulakshana, before we finish?
Yes, I would like to invite the audience to get in touch with us through our Facebook, historicaldialogue.lk, the website, historicaldialogue.lk, and our museum, which was recently launched at www.itsaboutTime.lk. Come visit us, write to us, and get in touch.
So can I say thank you very much, Sulakshana, for explaining, you know, this space, absolutely a place for education, and for showing the different ways in which we can get education, active, physical ways, which are always more exciting for, I think, young people who are interested in gathering knowledge. So I thank you very much for your time, for the explanation, and for telling us what's available out there for us to be more educated.
Thank you, Madhu, for this opportunity. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.